Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming in, settling in. Welcome to Going Beyond Land Acknowledgements in Recreational Work. As we let people into the Zoom room, I would love for you to put in the chat where you are coming from today. That can be, if you know the ancestral land that you are on, you could put that in the chat, and also what organization you represent. So where are you? Whose ancestral land are you on, if you know? And what organization you represent? See who's in the room. I'm gonna give everybody 30 seconds to get settled, and then we're gonna go ahead and get started. Alrighty, we're gonna get going. So thank you everybody for attending this conversation. This roundtable is called Going Beyond Land Acknowledgements in Recreational Work, and it is co-hosted by Redbud Resource Group, who is myself and the rest of my team, and Outdoor Alliance California. And we are so happy that you are with us here today for this hour-long conversation with some powerhouse leaders in the state in regards to tribal relations. I know that you're all going to learn a lot today, so I recommend having a piece of paper and pen handy, because you're going to leave with some major nuggets of wisdom that you don't want to miss. So let's go ahead and get going. My name is Taylor Pennywell, and I'm the facilitator of this conversation today. And I am a citizen of Berry Creek Rancheria of Time-Maidu Indians of California, located in Butte County, California. I'm also the executive director of Redbud Resource Group, and we are a Native American women-led nonprofit out of Sonoma County, California. And we are focused on eradicating public health outcomes in Native American communities through education projects, through community partnerships and relationship building, and also through research. And we are so happy to get to partner with Outdoor Alliance today, but also to host our amazing panelists who I respect very much. Today's discussion, we are going to hear stories of positive relationship building between Native communities and recreation organizations. We're going to learn about best practices for alliance building with the Native community. And we're going to catch up on policy updates from the state that encourage partnership between organizations, agencies, and Native communities. All of this in 1 hour. I'll tell you, you're going to leave wanting more, because an hour is simply not enough to dive into this into the depth that we really want to, but we're going to do the best we can. Now, Going Beyond Land Acknowledgements isn't just the name of this roundtable. It's actually the title of a program that we offer at Redbud Resource Group. And it is an organizational training and assessment program for organizations, agencies, and companies who want to build tribal relations with the Indigenous communities in the area that they serve. The purpose of the program is to help you get ready to return power, land, and resources to Native American communities. It is really rooted in concrete action and helping you understand what strengths and resources you have that can maybe be reallocated in an equitable way back to Indigenous communities who've been impacted by settler colonialism in the United States. Some of the pictures that we have here are from our Going Beyond Land Acknowledgements program. We've engaged and documented land back case studies. We've also seen resources allocated towards tribes to help them strengthen their tribal economies. And we've also documented elders and cultural knowledge bearers as they work to protect their languages, their baskets weaving skills, and their ecological practices as well. So that's just a little bit about our work. If you're interested in learning more, you can visit redbudresourcegroup.org. So what does it mean to go beyond land acknowledgements? That little statement that somebody makes in the beginning of an event where they say whose land they're on and that they're sorry for occupying it. What does it mean to go beyond that, to do something that's actually meaningful? I'm going to tell you what we tell our participants at Redbud. The first thing is taking concrete steps to restore land, power, and respect to Native communities that have been damaged by centuries of settler colonialism. Going beyond that little statement means actually taking steps to support our communities. The second is assessing ways in which one's own life and work have benefited from the violence inflicted upon Native people and to take action to correct the injustice. All of us are a part of this story, and we all have to reflect on what role we play in that story if we actually are meaningful about doing this work. And then lastly is changing the way that we approach common problems and topics to include Native voices in a way that is meaningful and authentic. Now, I'm going to give you one more nugget of wisdom before I pass the mic over to my roundtable participants. And that is our tribal relations rule at Redbud. It's really, really simple. And this is where that paper and pen come in handy, because I want you all to write this down. And that is treat tribes the way they want to be treated. It's a little bit of an inversion of that golden rule. When you're thinking about building relationships with your local Indigenous communities, their desires have to come first. You have to be willing to give up your preconceptions about how they want to be treated and really listen to what tribal people want and act on that desire as well in a way that is authentic. So on that note, I'm going to introduce our panelists today. I'm going to go in a slightly different order than what you see here because I want to go in the order that you're going to hear from people. So the first person we're going to hear from is Teresa Larejo-Simpson, and she is the California Stewardship Director of American Whitewater, a national organization with the mission to protect, restore, and enhance opportunities for enjoyment of our nation's whitewater rivers. Teresa has worked hard to build healthy, mutually beneficial relationships with Native communities, and you're going to hear about that work today in one of her case studies. The second person you're going to hear from is really our guest of honor, and that is Chairman Ron Goode of the North Fork Mono Tribe. Ron is a beloved leader and teacher in the Native community, and his work around climate change, cultural burning, and more have been celebrated globally by Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities alike. And currently, Ron is working on a 2023 Tribal State Water Summit, which will focus on the impact of hydroelectric dams on Native communities and empower tribes to advocate for themselves and for their futures. And then the third person we're going to hear from is Geneva E.B. Thompson. Geneva is a tribal member of Cherokee Nation, and she's the Assistant Secretary of Tribal Affairs for the California Department of Natural Resources, where she's advocating for increased tribal partnership and consultation. So thank you so much to these three people for coming. We're very happy to have you here. So the first person that we're going to hear from today is Teresa, and she's going to talk about building alliances with Ron's tribe, the North Fork Mono Tribe. Take it away, Teresa.
Thanks, Taylor. So I call my segment today Going Beyond That Email or Phone Call. I'm going to tell the story of how I developed a working relationship with Chairman Goode. I will detail some of the work American Whitewater has done in allyship with the North Fork Mono Tribe on the San Joaquin River. And finally, I will leave you with some of the lessons I've learned to honor, learn from, and partner with tribal communities. Next slide. So Chairman Goode and I met nearly a decade ago in the realm of the hydropower projects that impact the San Joaquin River. We sat across from each other in meetings with the other river stakeholders and Southern California Edison to implement plans required by the hydropower license. Back then, I had known of Chairman Goode and the North Fork Mono Tribe, but had never made any real connection beyond that meeting room. Next slide. Some years later, we were again in a hydropower meeting discussing study plans for Pacific Gas and Electric's project on the San Joaquin River Gorge. As we were going through a study plan for whitewater boating, it was then that I discovered how American Whitewater was disrespectful of the North Fork Mono tribe when Chairman Goode pointedly questioned the use of Squaw's Leap as a name for one of the Whitewater sections, and why was it still being used in official documents. I was horrified at the thought of how I had used the name without any thought to its hurtful connotation, and I was frozen in embarrassment. It was then Chairman Goode said something I will never forget. He didn't point fingers, harshly admonish me, or ask that I get the name removed from every whitewater boating guide and website in existence. He simply looked at me and made a request. Where you have the power to make that change, do so. Where you have the power to make that change, do so. Well, as the California Stewardship Director for American Whitewater, I did have that power, and the next day we made changes to the rapid name on our website. To be clear, American Whitewater did not make the changes to our website to get in good with the North Fork Mono tribe, nor to get a pat on the back. It was simply the right thing to do. Next slide. It was still a couple more years before my acquaintanceship with Chairman Goode morphed into a working relationship and friendship. And believe it or not, that moment came over food. Almond M&Ms to be specific. I had arrived at another hydropower meeting a little early and I was starving. So I gobbled down, one by one, a whole package of almond M&Ms at the meeting table. Sitting right next to me, Chairman Goode looked over at me and said in his commanding baritone voice, "You're really going to eat that whole package without offering me one." I sheepishly ate the last M&M and looked over at Chairman Goode, and he burst out into a hearty laugh. Finally, our ice-breaking moment had arrived. And ever since then, when we are together, I remember to share my treats with Chairman Goode, and we laugh together as we work collaboratively to protect and conserve the San Joaquin River. Next slide. So here's some of the work American Whitewater and North Fork Mono tribe have done together on the San Joaquin River. We have advocated for and secured a whitewater boating access trail built by Southern California Edison on the San Joaquin River that does not impact cultural resources. Next slide. We have helped negotiate long-term operating rules for Southern California Edison's hydropower project that return flows that are beneficial to the native aquatic species and provide opportunities for whitewater boating. Next slide. And what I'm most proud of, the North Fork Mono tribe worked diligently to map and identify the historic Mono Trail along the San Joaquin River Gorge, and American Whitewater used our funding network to find the resources for the tribe to complete that work. Next slide. So what are the lessons that I have learned? Exchanging emails, phone calls, or even sitting in the meeting room doesn't mean you have a relationship with the tribes. So get out there and meet the Native community on their homeland. Leave your ego at home. Let the Native community tell their own story and then listen, and listen some more. Don't look for that pat on the back. And remember, it's the human connections that really start a relationship. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I'm sure that the audience has a lot of questions for you. I'm going to ask you, if you're listening, to write down your questions, because we will have a Q&A at the end, and you can ask Teresa to expand on any of the points that she made here. Really appreciate that. And I just want to say to Teresa that Teresa is a really awesome at taking feedback and at relationship building. She doesn't give up. She took a big chance on me a couple years ago when she hired me to write a series of articles from the Native perspective about the Native relationship to California's rivers. And I got to say, in one of the first feedback meetings that we had, I brought her a draft of an article that I wrote with the Concal Valley Band of Maidu Indians. And I talked about the California genocide to build context. And when I gave it to her, I was really nervous that she was going to ask me to take that part out because, you know, maybe she thought her colleagues wouldn't like it, or it was going to freak people out or offend people. And I told her, I said, you know, let me know if you need me to tone this down a little bit. And her response was really telling. Her response was, "We are not editing what you have to say. people need to know the truth, even if it makes them uncomfortable, because having that understanding is essential for building empathy and for building bridges and relationships that can be really impactful for everybody. And so I just wanted to tell that little story about you, Teresa, because that really stuck with me. And I think it says a lot about your integrity as an advocate. So thank you.
Thank you.
On that note, I'm going to do a little shift here because I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see Ron, who's our next speaker. So Chairman Ron Goode, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to put out 2 questions for Chairman Goode, and then I'm going to let him just speak for about 20 minutes and answer these questions however seems appropriate to you. So the first question is why are building alliances important to your tribe and your goals as a chairman? And then the second question is, what are the do's and don'ts of tribal relations that you want this audience to walk away from today? Just little questions.
Am I on?
Yes, you're on.
Manahu, Iboso. I appreciate you inviting me here today, and sure wished I could see everybody out there, but here I am. This is kind of a special little talk today, and you know, with special people today. All of our panelists that you're listening to have a special relationship with them, and I just want to say with and Teresa always makes me laugh. Talks about her M&M story, and but you know, in the reality is that, you know, working with the hydros, whether it's Edison or PG&E or any of the other major players of federal players, including the Forest Service. There's only so far that you're going to be able to go as an individual or a representative of any organization, including tribes. And so, you know, one of the key things is sitting in the meetings, which are constant, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times a month. And, you know, they take a lot of time. These relicensing programs are designed to, that's what it's designed for, is to relicense the program that these utility companies have, and they're designed at 35, 40, 45, 50 years now. They keep changing it every time. So fortunately for me, I've been around long enough that I'm on my second stint with the PG&E and Kirkhoff, and I've done several with Edison. So again, listening to what other stakeholders want is important, because I'm hoping that they're going to listen to me as well for what we want. And I don't go into any of these relicensings without a laundry list. And so, you know, I expect to get most of it taken care of, and in some cases, I usually get about 3/4 of it, which is, you know, a pretty big accomplishment. So it was nice to be able to. Teresa and the Whitewater folks were struggling for quite some time, trying to figure out a trail that wasn't going through a site, as where they were, there were 4 or 5 sites. And so we finally went down with my team and surveyed the whole ground ourselves, and then figured out that we could put the trail near a site, but not damage the site. And it's knowing that the Whitewater people were not there to get into our sites. And if anybody wanted to get into the site, they could get into it whether there was a trail there or not. So in this case, you're actually helping people to come together to do what they want to be able to do and play and recreate on the creek. And in a sense, you're actually have folks that will be looking out for for our cultural resources as well. So for me, that was, worked in both ways. I'm going to answer the questions and then come back to a little bit on the topic. Why are building alliances important to the tribe and in our goals? I think one of the things is that tribes have clout, but only heard, not listened to. An alliance forms a union. A union is listened to. So, I think that's really important for you all to understand that each and every one of us, no matter your organization or tribe, especially in this relicensing type of situation, they're dealing with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission or even SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office, and they're going by the rules and they're going by the book. Here's what we have to do. Here's all that we have to do. We need to provide studies. We don't need to provide how we're going to improve the situation or the problems that we have created. All we need to do is to show that we created it, and then we'll get our relicense. So with that said, then, it's those of us that are at the table are saying, wait, that's not right. But again, those are the rules. So as long as they're playing by the rules, we actually are on the outside of that. So it's really important then to build a relationship with others and help them, achieve what they want so that we can achieve what we want. That's part of the building of the union. The other part of that is that on goals, for me anyway, the goal of the hydro is to restore the ecological culture of the river. Then the cultural resources. The availability of cultural resources feeds the sustainability of one's culture. So these hydro companies and hydro projects, there's a lot of environmental aspects that they're affecting, which causes climate change. And we have minimally 20% transvaporation through our hydros. On the San Joaquin River, we have over 15 dams. And there's really only one modern one, and that was built in the 1980s. The rest of them were all built back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and they're antiquated. And what that means is that when they go down into the dam, they don't have a communication. They have to come outside of the dam to make calls to their headquarters. So if they're what they call ramping up or ramping down, they're opening up their valves. It takes 20 minutes to go each step. And then they have to come back out and okay, did we good? Are we good? Oh no, we gotta go back. Okay. So you're going to talk about, opening the gates all the way up. You're looking at maybe more than an hour to get them up or get them back closed. Now, that is and the fact that these hydros themselves are really, Redinger, for instance, can barely light up Aubrey. Kirchhoff, which is down below it, lights up the dam. The rest of the power, there's very little power that goes into the system if they need it. So, their point and their purpose is really outdated. Now, though, when we're talking to the relicensing, these utility companies, PG&E, Edison, are trying to tell FERC, because FERC is writing them up for emergency plans. And they're going, oh, this actually, you know, they don't use the word antiquated, but oh yeah, because it takes us so long to ramp up or ramp down, that's actually good for emergency. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, how do you know, really the bottom line. But let me come back to that. I want to get, if I got a little bit of time here. Question number 2, what are do's and don'ts of tribal relations you want audiences to understand? Teresa was really good about, you know, her little points. They're excellent. But for me, it's don't assume. Don't just assume that you think you know what the tribes want. Even if the tribes sit there and don't say nothing, don't assume you think you know what they want or don't want. Don't misunderstand consultation. You know, it's a sad thing, actually, consultation is, because too many of our federally recognized governments, tribes, want the agencies to come to them for consultation. That works. They'll come there. But what you got to say is usually put in at the end of the report, not in the report. Well, it's included, but it's at the end, it's in the appendix. So you had a meeting, and then, you know, there's what you wanted to say, but it wasn't really built throughout the management plan. So that's really not effective way of doing things. And so all you're doing is playing into the hands of the people. So being a tribal participant creates a partnership. The moment you come to a meeting, the moment you signed up, you know, or whatever, that agency or utility or whomever, you know, now counts you as a partner. But it's basically a one-way partnership. Being an active player creates a relationship. Creating a relationship leads to an alliance. And that's the point that we're trying to put across here today is, you know, what is an alliance, and what's the point of creating this type of relationship that we can have. So as I said before, yes, tribes have clout, but, you know, we're only heard, we're not listened to. So it's something, no matter what agency you're working with, and most of us all work with numerous agencies. I got about 10 more minutes. So
Ron, can I ask you a question, Ron?
Yeah, yes, you already did.
I wonder if you can give us an example of a strong relationship that you've seen formed, or an example of a relationship that you've seen go wrong or that wasn't formed correctly.
Well, I don't know what a relationship that's gone wrong per se, but I'll use a bad analogy, and that's with the Forest Service. I actually have a really good relationship with the Forest Service, and a good relationship with a number of the forestry people. But when we go to work on documents, they still leave us out what we want, or they put in various goals and things that they say they've heard the tribes talk about, that this is how we want, you know, the forest to look. But in the end, in the document, there's no means of how they're going to get to that point, because they really haven't included the tribe. And with that said, then, you know, in a recent meetings that we've had, the state historic preservation office had to get down on the forest a little bit, because they were saying, well, wait a minute now, you don't have gathering in this report. You don't have the cultural resources that the tribes are talking about. So if you don't have them in there, how is it you're actually supporting what the tribes are talking about when it comes to their gathering, or protecting their gathering areas, or enhancing their gathering areas? So at this point in time, what I'm trying to say is that with the amount of time and effort that we put in with the Forest Service, that kind of thing should be a no-brainer. It should have not even be something that we have to discuss. It should already be in there, if they were listening to us. And so, so there you are again. And then I know where you're heading. In a recent plan revision meeting with two forests, the Sierra and the Sequoia, they started off the meeting by saying there were 36 tribes that they have for acknowledgement and partners. But I was the only one that showed up. Only one out of 36. I'm not sure what kind of partnership that is. If that's all is willing to show up. So that's an example of say trying to build a partnership that isn't really there. Hope I answered your question. One of the things that we're also looking at when we're looking at these the hydro parts and building this alliance that Teresa and I have, is that I had no qualms and no problem to step up and make sure she had the trail that she was needing to have, so that her people can get crazy and ride down the rapids. Hey, if that's what they want to do, fine. It's not something I'm going to do. But at the same time, if this is what they want, then the river's there. Then let's make sure they got it. So when it came down to the next project, and all of a sudden, PG&E was trying to pull a fast one by removing, this is a longer story, but anyway, in the relicense of 1984, PG&E had their grounds was several hundred, or like 100 acres. It was 80 acres here and another 120 over here on the other side. Well, we as a tribe had applied for those with the PG&E settlement, was turned down because those lands were in FERC, under FERC control, or within the FERC boundary. But when it came to the new relicensing, before we all met, before we all got together, PG&E went to FERC and changed those boundaries to the area of potential effect to only be 150 feet off the river. So those lands were no longer in play, which actually is going to work for me, because I'm going to reapply for them. But at the same time, when it came to our historic trail was outside of those lands, but the rules say if it's within 200 meters of the FERC boundary, it has to be included in the management plan. And they said, well, those lands have been done away with, so therefore they can't be included. It's like, well, I see how that works. All right. So we just decided, well, okay, let's just GPS our trail. Let's go out there and find our trail, volunteer on our time, and find the trail, because I know the trail comes to the river. And and on the river we got 28 sites on the Kirchhoff project. So I keep telling them, I said, well, how do you think these people got here? And I said, in our first investigation in 1978, one of our sites dated back to 6,500 years. So then in this time around, when my nephew was working on the project, and the archaeological investigations went back to 8,000 years. So that's 8,000 years that our people have been using this river. And so we asked him, PG, and he said, well, how do you think our people got here to utilize this river and make all these sites for 8,000 years? Did they fly in by spaceship? Did they come in by helicopter? How'd they get here? Oh, they came in by trail. And where did they live? Do you know where they lived? Well, we know where they lived. We know what their villages were and their places, that they've been on this land for 8,000 years. So that's immediately what we started to do then with Shelley Davis King, and then Crystal West joined us. But in this whole concept, we started creating this map of a watershed that said, here's where the Mono tribe is and their people lived, and here's how they got down to the river on these trails. And we GPS that trail right back into the cove, which I knew we would. And now, of course, the trail is included in the Historic Properties Management Plan. But along with that, stepping up, Teresa had no, I didn't even ask her. She just simply said, we got funds and we're going to take care of it for you. And it was like, wow, now that's an alliance, that's where you know that you're doing things together. I know I'm almost out of time. I switched gears, but I caught another piece there on the trails and the mapping. But real quick on the ecological culture, people don't really understand that, we like computers and we like the lights and what the hydro projects are doing for us. But at the same time, what has it done to the river? Before these dams came, we call them huya, with they're the caterpillars. They came through and they cleaned the bushes. They thinned them, and they were part of the environment. And they're quite tasty as well. But at the same time, our mussels were there. And we harvested our mussels into the 90s. And then all of a sudden from the 90s, and I think because in the last 20, 30 years, especially in PG&E and the Kirkhoff, they've been really lowering the water clear down to the river in a number of times, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year. And this is really causing a major problem. So we've lost our suckers up on the creeks where we speared and fished, for centuries. And the trout's not there. Back in 1995, I asked FERC in the relicensing under Edison, I said, why are there no eagles on the river? And Edison and FERC came back to me and said, well, because there's no trout, there's no fish. And I said, well, stupid question. I already know the answer, but why is there no fish? Well, because there's invasive bass. Okay. And what do? Well, they eat the trout. And the trout is the ones that's up on top of the water. The bass are at the bottom of the water. And so the eagles, the ospreys, they get the trout up on top. The trouts are the ones that move up and down the river. The mussels attached to their gills, and they're able to travel back and forth. So the trout's not traveling, neither is the mussels. So pretty soon we started losing batches of our mussels, and so eventually in Kirkhoff, we don't have any at all now. So these different types of things, are impacted. And so then along came, to finish the story, along came, the fact that Edison wasn't releasing the water for the Whitewater folks because the bass responding. I said, wait a minute, what? The bass are invasive. You already said this. And now you don't want to release the water because you're going to wipe out the bass because they're spawning. You know, this whole thing sometimes just, you know, doesn't make sense, you know, and it's kind of like, well, it's something that we all have a big problem with trying to figure out, you know, how this works. And right now, you know, tribes, one of the reasons that we're going to be having this talk at the Water Summit is because the relicensing are going on the east side and over here on this side and south of me. And a lot of these tribes is their first time for participating. And so they don't know how to go about. They come to the meeting, there's only one of them and there's 30 other people. And most of it's all staff from PG&E or the company they hire. And, you know, so, you know, I guess you kind of feel like Custer in the circle of the hydro people, right? You know, you're the only one, you're the only little Indian there. What do I do? You know, how do I handle this? Well, you know, so, you know, just bring more M&Ms, I guess.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Ron.
Thank you.
All right, Ron, thank you so much for giving us your insight and sharing some of your experience with us. People are asking lots of questions in the chat that we're going to get to in about 10 minutes once we hear from Geneva. So we're going to shift over to Geneva, and I'm going to ask you, Geneva, as a Native person, as a citizen of Cherokee Nation, why do you hope that organizations and agencies take the time to build robust alliances with tribal communities?
Well, Watto Taylor and also Redbud Resources Group Outdoor Alliance for having me today. It's such a pleasure to join this panel and, you know, hear from Chairman Goode and Teresa. I really appreciated, you know, hearing about the alliances that you all have and lessons learned. So, you know, Watto and thank you. You know, as a Native person, I really come to this work with you know, deep personal understanding and deep, you know, connection to not only the importance of lands, natural resources, cultural resources, honoring and respecting tribal sovereignty, working with tribal communities. That's something that's deeply personal to me. You know, as you said, you know, I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, was raised, you know, knowing the importance of what it means to be a Native woman, the importance of being a member of a tribe, and my role, you know, in those spaces to really honor and respect not only my people and you know, my cultural resources, but all Native people and their cultural resources. And so really bringing that deep personal connection and understanding to, you know, this role that I have here at the state of California is something that is really important to me and really drives me to work to find solutions, to find ways to address the deep historical wrongs committed by the federal and state governments towards Native Americans and tribes. You know, it's very that hurt and that state sanctioned genocide that had, you know, happened, you know, in the colonization and the creation of the United States is still, we still feel those effects today. And those actions and those historical wrongs has led to loss of life, lands, culture, and really we're all feeling the impacts of it. And I really appreciate the framing of this panel of moving beyond land acknowledgement, because that's what we need to do. We need to move beyond just acknowledging towards addressing those deep historical wrongs and addressing the impacts that are being felt today. You know, I'm motivated by the resiliency of Native people, our tribal governments, in surviving that state-sanctioned genocide and being here today and thriving and growing and really working to create a future that that is more equal and just and more in tune of where we need to be as not only Native people, but as a society as a whole. I think that also just kind of the reason why I joined the California Natural Resources Agency, is because I saw that there is a growing commitment here in the state to really address those historical wrongs. I'm, deeply honored to be the first Assistant Secretary for Tribal Affairs at the Natural Resources Agency. We've never had someone in this role before. And I've been here for about a year now, and really it's an exciting place to be because we're building the office, we're building our tribal affairs policies and programs to really get at addressing those historical wrongs. And that really was all kicked off by Governor Newsom's or this current iteration of our work was kicked off by Governor Newsom's apology through executive order in 1519 that really apologized on behalf of the state for historical violence, exploitation, and disposition and attempted destruction of tribal communities. And in that executive order and in the policies coming out of that executive order has really been clear that an apology is the first step, but we really do need to have meaningful implementation to address those historical wrongs. The apology is not enough. We've got to keep moving forward. We've got to keep addressing those harms. And something that I'm really excited about in our office is really rolling up our sleeves and figuring out how we can adjust state processes to do that. The way that we're starting to do that is getting past this checking the box type tribal consultations where you send one letter and then you're like, oh, we did it, moving past that and really building a policy, but also a relationship that creates early, often, and meaningful government-to-government consultations, with the goal of those consultations building collaborative partnerships with California Native American tribes. And so it's not a project-by-project consultation. It's a collaborative partnership that then consultations on projects are discussed in that collaborative partnership and relationship with tribes. And so we're moving in this direction of early, often, and meaningful tribal consultations with that goal of partnership in mind. We're also really working hard to increase tribal access and co-management to natural resources and lands, and understanding that that for too long, tribes have been cut off from their natural resources, cut off from their ancestral lands. And because of that, not only are tribal communities suffering, but also the natural resources are suffering. And really honoring and understanding the interconnected relationship between traditional ecological knowledge, tribal expertise, and management of natural resources being deeply important for the culture, for the people, but also deeply important for the natural resources to be healthy and strong and resilient. And we have to make that connection again if we're going to get through this climate crisis. There's so much evidence that is showing the implementation of traditional ecological knowledge having such wide benefits. And I'm sure I'm sure that's the tip of the iceberg, right? Like, I'm sure there is such deep understanding in our tribal communities and really wanting to ensure that the state is supporting that connection. And, when appropriate, we're there as partners, and when not appropriate, we step back and ensure that tribes can do what they do best and connect with their natural resources in their communities. We're also really looking forward to and working towards increasing ancestral land return. And so the Governor Newsom issued the Statement of Administrative Policy on Native American ancestral lands that really directs the state departments to not only increase access and co-management to natural resources, but really to look and identify increasing ancestral land return. And so we're looking at our policies and programs to see how we can do that. And there's a wide variety of ways that the state can partner with tribes in that ancestral land return. Some of it's grants, some of it's, working with private partners. And sometimes it's looking at the state's excess lands that we might have under state management and seeing there's opportunities for return. And so there's a wide variety there. And part of that is building the partnerships with tribes so we can identify which lands are good candidates for ancestral land return and how we can adjust on the state side to be, better partners in that space. So that's just kind of a quick, I know we only have 10 minutes, but a quick kind of download of what we're hoping to do to really get past that land acknowledgement, get past that apology, to actually roll up our sleeves and do meaningful work in addressing those historical state wrongs. And so that's what I'm hoping for as a Native person. That's and for my agency that I'm working for.
Awesome. I'm wondering, Geneva, because you have a lot of experience in this world, do you have any examples of case studies of robust consultation or positive alliances that have been built that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think, well, on the robust consultation, one of my first projects when joining the agency was really looking at how we're going to implement our nature-based solutions executive order. And so essentially looking at how the state can build policies to support nature-based solutions in addressing climate crisis and biodiversity. And I was really excited to work with the partners here in the state and also with tribal governments to identify what tribal priorities are in the nature-based solutions process. And so we implemented this early, often, and meaningful consultation concept to how we're going to roll out these strategies. And I had we had many, one-on-one government to government consultations. We had many tribal roundtable discussions and workshops, and I had the pleasure of connecting with over 70 different California Native American tribes about nature-based solutions and how tribal priorities should be acknowledged and integrated into this new policy. And so we have two strategies that came out of that: the Natural Working Lands Climate Smart strategy and the Pathways to 30 by 30 strategy. And in both strategies, one of the top core commitments is partnering with California Native American tribes on this work. And so that is in the forefront of our nature-based solutions work, which really then sets the tone, or, I like to say it directs the state's head, right, towards ensuring that the rollout of nature-based solutions is in partnership and in collaboration with tribes, and that we are really identifying what tribal priorities are in this space and supporting our partners in the implementation of those strategies. So I'd use that as example of what does robust consultation really mean, and how does that get reflected in policy? And I really do think, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was actually, so we had a question come up about 10, 15 minutes ago when Chairman Goode was speaking, and I want to present it now because I'm reminded of it as you speak. Someone asked in regards to Ron's example of that Forest Service meeting, saying, Forest Service saying they have 30 plus tribal partners, but only Ron is the one at the table. And there being a little bit of a dissonance there, right? There's the Forest Service says they have partnerships, but then that's what we're looking at when we really look at what the partnerships are. And someone asked, why are tribes not showing up? It's a complicated question, but I'm wondering if you could tackle it.
Yeah, it is a complicated question, and I think it's very important for folks to know that tribal governments are at capacity. They have so much work to do. They're running their own nations, right? So as a state partner, we have to really acknowledge the workload that tribal governments are doing and having to navigate through. And so if we really break it down and understand, who all is consulting with tribes. You have, city and county governments, you have the state government, and all of our different departments have different tribal consultation policies. You have the federal government, and even some tribes are even working with international partners as well. And so those are a ton of different governments that are continuously reaching out to tribes, seeking consultation, and that is a lot of workload. And then you look internally, tribal governments are governing, their members. They have their own internal policies and programs that they are doing as well, with limited capacity, limited staff time, limited budgets, limited resources. And so I think that's something that's really important for outside partners, agencies and departments to realize. So when we are seeking partnership and collaborating with the tribes, we understand the barriers that tribes are facing and try to work through those and try to be flexible on our end. And so we can meet tribes where they are and how they would like to be engaged with, that meets their internal needs and processes as well. And so that is really, and getting back to Chair Goode's point, is you have to have those relationships and those understanding with the people that you're working with, so you can meet folks where they are, meet tribal governments where they are. So I think that's one component. I think another component is, and I'm not going to speak for the U.S. Forest Service, I'm not quite sure exactly what their policies and programs are, but I know from my side of things, if we're not getting a lot of feedback, or if we're not getting tribal government's interest, that we need to look back and see what processes are we doing, and what missteps or miscommunications have happened, and try to address those, to ensure that people either feel comfortable coming to a meeting, feeling comfortable participating, or maybe we need to look at the actual project that we're wanting to talk about and say, does this need to be rethought and reworked? And so I can keep talking on this topic a lot, but I know that we're short on time as well. Those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, thanks so much, Geneva. Really appreciate
Yeah.
that. It reminds me of what Chairman Goode said in the beginning, that, tribes have a lot of clout. People want tribes at the table. They want tribes to sign on and give their comments of support, but the tribes are not always actually heard. Right. And so when you're in a place where you think you're supposed to have tribal support and the tribes aren't showing up, the first question that I think about is this project, or is this project actually benefiting tribes? Because if it was, then they would probably be there. And if the answer is no, it doesn't really benefit them, then it's time to go back to the drawing board and think about how to authentically redesign or design a project with tribal sovereignty in mind, with tribal context in mind, and with the interests of the tribe in mind, because we cannot simply be used for clout, right? We're real people with real needs and real family histories and a real relationship to land that extends so far beyond a signature of support. So I really appreciate that. It is 10 o'clock and I see people are popping off because they need to go, but I wanted to give one more opportunity for people to ask a question to Teresa or to Chairman Goode. I can see that there's so many questions. I really apologize that we're not going to answer them all. But Chairman Goode, we have lots of people asking about how they can support the Water Summit. Maybe you want to speak on that?
Sure, send money. No, just, go ahead and get a hold of DWR, and there's a website. My name's on there. You can email me or call me. Depends on however you want to support it. We want you to be at the summit, though. That's the most important thing that we're trying to do right now. We're raising funds so that we can help tribes who can't afford to get there or stay for 3 or 4 nights, and make sure that you're an active participant in it. And we've got a full load of topics that we're going to be discussing. It's not just hydro, we're all aspects. We're even bringing in climate change as well as fire as a part of the program, and it's all part of water. So look at the agendas, get on the list, mailing list if you're not. And, there's really no registration that I'm aware of. It's just, you're planning to attend. We have probably room for 300. We are going to be in Geneva's office, and natural resources, brand new building. I haven't even been there yet. Geneva hasn't even invited me yet. But it's fantastic that they've opened the door for us. We're also going to be using another state building where we're going to be having films and maybe some cultural vendors. And, right now we only have like 1 or 2 cultural vendors throughout the state, and we'll be looking for more. But we have to get clearance first when you're on state ground, or rather you can sell your wares or not. And so we're trying to get all that cleaned up and ready to go. But we are in the midst of our fundraising right now, and a number of tribes and organizations are reaching out and trying to help, so but it will cost us around $150,000 minimally for the 3 days. And but it meets every 5 years, so this will be my 4th and probably last for me. But it's been a sweet ride, because we've made a lot of progress. And I think one of those Geneva just mentioned was, by acknowledging California Native American tribes. That's a terminology we put forth in 2008. It's still there, and it's used in legislation, and it includes all tribes, federally recognized, unacknowledged state tribes, allotment land tribes, Indian commissions, reservations, rancherias, the state of California. So that's what's really important, that these are what's coming out of the water summits. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ron. I got a couple questions. Just last thing I'm going to address about language use in recreational spaces. People seem to be really concerned about colonized language and are asking for academic data that's going to back up that this is hurtful for Native people. I would suggest that you don't need academic data to know if a word or a name is harmful to people. I would use your common sense. But if you do need some data, Illuminatives is an organization, Illuminatives, that you can look up, and they have collected data on the harm of mascots and tribally harmful language. But again, you don't need Western science to tell you whether something is wrong or not, Can
I chime in a second?
Yes.
Just really quick, there's actually, as my mother would always say, there's 2 sides to the coin, and the coin goes together as one coin. And so when we look at mascots, in some ways it may be damaging, in another way it's not, because the moment that Redskins and Indians and Chiefs and Braves are gone, we're playing into the colonial mindset of the United States government that says they are still trying to eliminate the Native American from the land. And so on the other aspect, like Squaw Leap, for instance, what I had brought up to Teresa, I was surprised when I saw it still on the reach. But the reality and what's going on right now with changing all squaw names is that only those that are under federal jurisdiction, and that's what happened down in the Squaw Leap area, which got changed to San Joaquin River Gorge. What the actual Squaw Leap wasn't in that recreation. It's actually on private property. So that therefore the name of the leap is still there. And also, as I pointed out to some people, don't always be so quick to jump on that bandwagon. Number one, many of these places, we have stories. And so if you eliminate the place, what happens to the story? You know, and I mean, we could talk forever. This would be a good topic just to sit down and talk about, you know, but at the same time, there's a number of issues. So I'll just say, you know, think about it before you jump right in.
Thank you, Ron. Alrighty, we are 7 minutes over, so I want to make sure everybody can go and respect everyone's time. I have put a link to our website, redbudresourcegroup.org. We do have a public masterclass going beyond land acknowledgements coming up at the end of August that I would love to see some of you at. We go into Native 101. So if you heard the experts talking here today and you were like, man, I need some background information so that I can follow the conversation because you don't have that context yet, that class will give you the context and the language that you need to be able to engage in tribal relations in a robust way. So the link is in the chat. Thank you so much for attending. I wish we had more time to answer all of your questions, but we're going to call it a day. So thank you so much. And thank you to our panelists. Hope to see you at the State Water Summit.